Hi, friend. Jaime Kalman Chipko here, and you are watching Jaime Magic. And if you want more information about how you can get unstuck and create positive changes in your life and your relationships, please visit me at jamiemagic.com. All right. So I wanted to talk to you today about relationships. Relationships, they are the spiritual gymnasium of our human life. If you want a free gym membership for your emotional system, have a relationship. Now, relationships with anybody fit the bill. Okay. So whether it's your children or your parents or your partner, your spouse, your colleagues, a dear friend, a family member, your kids, whatever it is, right? Whoever the person is with whom you have a relationship. It doesn't matter if it's personal, business, family, relationships are relationships. And the reason they are so informative and so enriching in terms of, if you want to work on yourself and you're really into personal development and just becoming a better version of yourself, then relationships are a great place to start, because you're going to find a lot of good material there. And the reason for this is because if you are in a relationship with someone, and let's just say it's a family member, okay, because family members tend to really push our buttons, generally speaking, right? Nobody can trigger you like a family member. So I just want you to imagine for a moment someone who you have a close relationship with. So again, maybe it's a spouse or partner, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe it's your child, right? So think about them for a moment. And when you think about your relationship with them, I want you to think about the fact that in that one relationship, there's actually 4 relationships in existence, all happening simultaneously. So that is why relationships can be so complicated. Let me explain. The first relationship, right, that you experience is your relationship with the other person. So the way that you perceive that relationship. Okay. And what you have to understand about your perception of this relationship is that your perception, okay, so the way that you experience this relationship, it is being filtered through your values, your preferences, your likes, your dislikes, your own filters of perception. They're all based off of your experience of the world and your nervous system, really. So what I mean by that is that if you have any emotional wounds, especially unhealed wounds from past relationships, then you're also going to be experiencing your relationship with this person through the filters of your past emotional pain. So it's being filtered through the various channels that make you you. Okay. So the first relationship that you experience, like I said, is your perception of the relationship with this other person. Now, you also have a second relationship happening at the same time, which you may not be as aware of, but you will be now. When I mention it, you'll be like, huh, that's something I never thought about that. It's your relationship with yourself. So that's like how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your level of self-worth, self-acceptance, the way you judge or criticize yourself. If you notice that you have a lot of sensitivity around being disrespected, for example, and it's very important to you that you are, respected and appreciated and valued in your life by the people in your life, then that is a great example of the relationship you have with yourself, that if it's important to you that you be heard and really seen and validated, then, that is going to have what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to have an influence on the way that you experience your relationship with other people, because you have these needs, right? We all do, not just you, but we all have subconscious needs. So then the third relationship is the relationship that the other person has with you. So that would mean their perception of the relationship that you both have together. And just like with you, their experience of the relationship with you, the way they perceive the experience, is going to be filtered through their values and their belief systems and their preferences and their past emotional wounds and whatever current pains they have as well. It's going to be sort of bouncing off of all of that. So then the fourth relationship that is present and yet invisible in this one relationship between you and this other person is that other person's relationship with themselves. So I bring this up because we often expect relationships to be silky smooth. We expect them to be easy. We expect them to be harmonious. I even hear people saying like, oh, you have I just want to find the perfect guy, or I just want to find the perfect relationship. And that leads me to believe that if that's the goal, then, you may have some digging to do, because there are layers of every human being that are mysteries to themselves. And that is why relationships are so amazing for personal growth and spiritual development, because we come into each other's lives like specifically to show and mirror to one another our various, issues. And so if somebody in your life is pushing your buttons, it's actually not them that is the entire problem. Okay. What it is they are here in your life for a very important reason. And that is to push that button so that you are aware that that button exists within your nervous system. They're showing you where you are triggered. They're not showing you to punish you. They're showing you, and you have the opportunity when you feel them push your buttons to say, oh, when they push my button, what does that feel like? Like what's the emotional reaction that you get? So let's pretend that you have a relationship with a family member. And let's say that there is a big conflict and it's been going on for probably a couple of years, but it's gotten progressively worse. And now it's at a point where you're not even speaking. So one of the things that also comes into play is temperament. We all have different temperament, right? So if you are the explosive temperament, where it doesn't take much, you just explode, or maybe you have the temperament of someone who implodes, right? You kind of like take it all in and just sort of contain it and keep it all tight inside, not really reacting until enough times bring you to the point where it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then you explode. And it's like a volcano, like a volcanic eruption of emotion and complaint and resentment. And, that's really tricky, because if you've been sitting on it for a long time and you've been holding it in rather than expressing it, when it initially comes up. And by the way, the explosive temperament and the imploding, simmering to a boil to an explosive temperament. There's not one that's better than the other. And these are not your only two choices, by the way. I just want to give you a little compare and contrast. The thing about it, the second one that I just went over, when you hold it in and then explode, the painful nature of that type of relationship is that you have not been expressing your needs and your authentic feelings about what's been going on in the relationship, whether it's like the other person's actions or words or intentions. And so the more that you held that in and did not respond, the longer you have been carrying this resentment, right? Because if you've been holding it in and you haven't been expressing that you have a grievance, right, with this person, you're containing all the criticism that you feel, then it's like drinking a bottle of poison and expecting the other person to die. Is that going to work? Right? So if you want the other person to change, you have to be able to communicate how you feel and what you need, and what a potential solution could be in your opinion. That would be steps towards a resolution. And we have to be willing to have a resolution before we can even have a conversation. Because if you don't really want a resolution, if the resentment that you feel and the criticism and the grievance that you feel is actually more valuable to you, your need to be right about your side of the story, which of course you feel like you're right. You're experiencing this relationship through your own perspective, right? So it's your nervous system moving through this experience with this person. So of course you believe you're right because you're only seeing your side of it. And the thing is that if our need to be right is more important than our desire for a peaceful relationship, then we're just going to continue to hold on to that grievance, because at that point we're actually getting something out of it, meaning that the payoff is now that you feel better than the other person. By making them wrong and feeling right, you are countering the resentment that you feel when you feel disrespected by them. So you do have to look at that relationship with yourself. Remember, that was relationship number 2. The first relationship is your perceived relationship with the other person, the way you're experiencing it. And the second relationship was your relationship with yourself. So whenever there's a conflict with another person and we're experiencing resentment and we are drinking that bottle of poison and expecting the other person to die, that's a clue. That's a clue that we are on the wrong track. I guess one way you could think of it is that you are on like a one-way path to nowhere, because the thing is there's nowhere to go. You're just going to stay in the resentment. And, it's funny. I asked somebody once who was in this situation, I said, do you want to see this conflict resolved, with your family member? And he said, well, yeah, I do. And I said, okay, well, that's great. I said, what would that look like if it were resolved, in your opinion? And he said, well, she would apologize for everything that she's done wrong, and she would understand how much I've done for her. And I said, okay, my friend, you don't really want a resolution. You want an apology. And those are two different things. Does she owe you an apology? And he said, oh, absolutely. And he listed off all these things that she had done and all these boundaries that she had crossed. And I said, well, okay, so I hear that she's been, just very disrespectful of your boundaries. But I'm curious, I wondered, did you ever communicate to her these boundaries? Was she aware that you were not okay with the things that she was doing? And he said, no. He said, no, it wasn't like a no. It was actually like, he was like, well, yeah, she should know. That was what it was. She should know. And I said, oh no, I get that. It seems like, common sense, but you'd be surprised depending on how another person is raised, maybe to them, borrowing things without asking, or taking things and not replacing them, or, just like putting themselves first. Maybe that's just how they were raised. Maybe they're just modeling what, the people in their life that were significant, that, they grew up with. Maybe that's like, maybe they never had a reason. Maybe they were an only child and they never had to share. Maybe, I don't know, maybe their parents felt the need to like really coddle or overly nurture, or let them, I hate the word spoiled, but, maybe they just, never really held the child accountable for anything. Right. And that child grew up to be someone who just doesn't understand other people's boundaries, or doesn't really think about others first. Now, I'm not letting people off the hook for behavior that's, unkind or unfair or unjust, but it's important to think about the fact that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So we're always looking through. And by the way, that's not my quote. I wish I could say that it was, but I heard Wayne Dyer say it once, but I don't actually know who said it originally, but I just love it. That we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are, meaning that we're always seeing things through the filters of our own past experiences. So what that means is that if you're in conflict, like this gentleman was, with his friend, then you can see that like he was not understanding that the other person could have reasons for why they behave the way they do. And maybe they were not meaning to be disrespectful to him. Unfortunately, in his case, respect and being respected and appreciated and valued was a very, very important part of this man's nature. He was very, felt very validated and sort of qualified by the world around him based upon his influence on others. He really appreciated having like, high status, being helpful, being useful, being resourceful. He was very giving, very generous. But also, with all of his generosity, he didn't realize that he had a very high expectation of others, that they should be as generous and as giving, and they should just be as, as thoughtful as he was. And so, we would all love that to be the case, but we all know that's not the case. So rather than vilifying the other person and cutting them out of our lives and deciding that they're horrible and holding these criticisms against them, it is worth it to ask yourself, do you want a resolution with this person? Really, do you want this conflict that you have with them resolved? And then really be honest with yourself. What would that look like if it were resolved? And look, if you do feel the other person has wronged you in a way that you deserve an apology, then, it's okay to say that, right? But also be aware that the other person may not even be aware themselves that they've done anything wrong, which I know is shocking under certain circumstances. You'd be amazed what people don't think they have to apologize for. Amazed. So here's the thing. You can't change the other person. I'm going to take a sip of my electrolytes here. Mm-hmm. All right. So when it comes to healing a relationship, the first thing is we need to look at the relationship that we have with ourselves. Okay. So take a look at what are your triggers? What are the buttons that keep getting pushed? And also take a look at your temperament. Are you the type of person who is ultra sensitive? Do you take things very personally? Are you comfortable with confrontation? Are you okay with expressing your needs? And are you comfortable being direct with people? And on that note, circling back to the gentleman I was talking to you about with his female friend who, he had stopped speaking to, And they had been very close for years. In his case, when I asked him, I wonder if this person was aware that they were like busting through your boundaries. And he said, well, they should know. It's common sense, right? It's just common courtesy. And I said, well, I hear you, but we can't really deal with what should and shouldn't be, because shoulding on somebody doesn't really do any good. We have to look at what is. So I get it, what you're saying. You have an expectation that the other person should know what is respectful and what the boundary is. But is it possible, do you think, that the other person did not realize that you had these boundaries? Perhaps could it be at all possible that they just did not know that this was a line in the sand? That maybe they didn't have any idea that they were crossing a line. Maybe they thought you were okay with it. And by the way, this gentleman was the second type of temperament, the type that kind of like sits with it, sits on it, kind of keeps a lid on it, and then is sort of kind of keeping a checklist. Oh, she did it again. Oh, she did it again. Oh, she did it again, And then, the huge explosion when he finally did explode in his situation was over something so minor that the other person, she had no idea what he was really upset about and why he was so upset. So from her experience, her filters, right, and her perception of the experience of the relationship and the conflict with this man was that, he was just going crazy on her. He was losing his mind. He was being irate and irrational and acting psychotic and, just coming at her for nothing. And was just blowing up at her and over the smallest thing, and just she couldn't understand, which made a lot of sense to me, because I thought, okay, if you've been sitting on things for a long time and then you finally bring it to the surface over something that's very minute, that is going to send the message that you're overreacting to something, and that the other person they don't have a chance to know what it is that you really are upset about. And that's when the whole relationship went off the rails with these people, was that, by the time the woman knew what the man was upset about, well, no, I'm sorry, she didn't know what he was upset about. She thought he was like losing it because she wouldn't take him to the airport after, he had picked her up a million times, and just, and I guess he had asked her for a ride to the airport, and she said, I can't, I got to get my daughter somewhere. And he just lost it. And she just felt like he was being just so inappropriate, right? Like, you don't talk to people that way. Oh my gosh, I'm allowed to say no. Like, what is this? And, it just felt very irrational to her. And you can imagine that from her perspective, it was, because if she had no idea that he'd been carrying this resentment for so long, then for him to blow up over that request would seem irrational, right? So that's why when we become aware of our temperament, we have to take accountability. So we have to stay on our side of the street. And that was an area where this gentleman's side of the street needed some cleaning up. Okay. So with him, I didn't even talk about what was going on with her. I kept bringing it back to him, because I said, okay, I really, really, really get that she has just let you down so many times and is really not treated you very well, in your opinion. But we cannot change her, okay? And you can spend your money complaining to other people all day long about her. That is not what I am here to listen to. What I'm here to listen to for you is, what do you believe to be true, okay, about the situation, about yourself, and about your expectations, and about what should be here, so that we can take a look at what needs to shift in you. Because I'm not saying it's your fault, but I just want you to be able to respond, okay? And respond rather than react. So when we react, okay, like he did, he blew up, right? That's a reaction. And that was not coming from his rational mind. that was coming from his emotional brain. So that was coming from the limbic system. And he just got triggered into fight, flight, freeze. In his case, it was fight. And, he came off as the bad guy, and he came off as the perpetrator, and, the person, she felt victimized. And yet he exploded because he had felt so victimized for so long, but he had never expressed it. If you hold on to a resentment or a grievance and you never express it, then there is no boundary. How would that person know that she was crossing a boundary? So I talked to him about that. I said, it's interesting that you want to feel appreciated and respected in your life, and yet you allowed this person to continuously disrespect you time and time again until you couldn't take it anymore. And I'm just curious, what do you think that was for you? Why do you think, this went on for as long as it did? And he said, I just kept wanting her to change. I just kept thinking she would just eventually become aware that, like, I'm not this like ATM machine of favors. Like, she's eventually going to have to be a friend to me too. Like, I'm not just here to give to her constantly. Like, there needs to be some give and take. And I just wanted to let her like realize that and show up to that. I didn't feel like I should have to tell her that, I'm not her father. I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to tell a grown woman this, right? And I said, yeah, no, it makes total sense. And see how, like, there really is no right or wrong. There's just a conflict because two people have different goals. And so if the goals are different, his goal was for her to realize how giving he was and be appreciative of it. But his constant giving without expressing what it was that he wanted in return thwarted that entire goal. Because why would she appreciate, or why would she feel the need to change if he's always showing up as giving? Like, there's no reason for her to stop asking if he's always giving. So he had a need to be generous, but it wasn't for the reasons he thought. His need to be generous was actually coming from a place of wanting to be appreciated for his generosity. And that's not generosity. It's not authentic generosity. It's actually like covertly manipulative. And that's exactly what she wound up picking up on. And, then when he blew up on her, that's exactly what she accused him of, was like being emotionally manipulative. The thing is, we are communicating all the time. Whether we are communicating verbally or non-verbally, whatever is operating subconsciously within you, meaning behind the scenes, is actually what is going to be applying the energy to the things we do and say. So what people are going to feel is that subconscious intention. And so she did not feel generosity from him. She felt that sense of like, resentment, but he wasn't expressing it. And so she kind of thought maybe she was being sensitive. That's why communication is so important. And, what we need to do is, when we do find ourselves in conflict with someone, it is so important to ask ourselves, am I willing to learn something really important or really valuable, from this experience. So this is the reality check. Am I willing to do something to make this better? Okay. Am I willing to take the first step? Even if you think the other person is wrong, are you willing to do something to make it better, even if you don't believe that you should have to? Okay. And will making this person wrong make you feel like a better person? Or, will making them wrong be useful to healing the situation for the two of you? Like, how is making them wrong going to help you guys? Right? So in this gentleman's case, how was making his friend wrong, even if he felt that she was, how was making her wrong going to help the situation and make it better? It wasn't. It was going to make him feel better about himself, but it was not going to make the relationship better. So he could feel right, but the relationship would remain broken. That's the cost of holding on to being right rather than allowing yourself to see this slightly differently so that you can create peace. So the question you need to ask yourself, if you're not quite ready, to see the other person's side, is what is it? What is it that is really upsetting you? What is the pain? What is the criticism? I once heard it said that behind every criticism is a wish, that behind every meltdown that a child has is an unmet need. And they just don't know how to ask for what they need. Maybe they don't know what they need. So you need to ask yourself that. What am I making this mean? What am I making this conflict mean? And in this gentleman's case, it was, I am being disrespected. This person doesn't respect me. And she is a B word. That was what this person felt. And it's where we go, right? We just go for the jugular and when we get really, really hurt. So, the next thing you have to look at is there any any possibility that this is a misperception on your part? Could you possibly be willing to consider that there may be, a misinterpretation? Okay. Or did you miss the mark on anything? Right. And in this gentleman's case, he never expressed his boundaries. He never articulated what he needed, what he expected when things weren't feeling fair, how they could balance it out. Oh, hey, listen, I love helping each other out, and I'm glad that you feel you can call upon me because, I want you to be able to depend on me. And, I just feel like sometimes our relationship feels imbalanced because then when I ask you for help, it feels like you can never do it. And so I'm starting to feel like I'm doing all the heavy lifting in the relationship. So the boundary for me is I have no problem helping you out, but I would love it if you could, show up for me sometime, some way, that's just so that's important to me. So the other thing is that we want to look at if we do have a misperception, okay? So, well, do we have all the information? right? Like if you believe this person is selfish and greedy and she's a user and she's abusing you and she's a boundary buster, you have to ask yourself, can you absolutely know that that is true? Like if you had to go in front of the universal judge and say this person is a user, right? And ungrateful. Can you absolutely know that that's true? Do you have all the information? What if what if your expectation of this person is just a bit off? Like, what if the reason that they're always asking you for rides places is because maybe they don't have dependable transportation. And so when you ask them for rides, it's really hard for them to say yes because that's the exact area that they're struggling in. Is there another area that you could have asked them to show up for you? For example, maybe they could babysit your kid, or maybe they could, um, help you with something, be there for you in some other way. Does it have to be a tit for tat situation? Because maybe your expectation of them is off, right? So this is the information I'm talking about that could be missing. And this is the stuff that we have to be willing to ask ourselves, even when we're so pissed and we just are so beyond mad. But if we don't investigate, we will stay stuck on the grievance. And believe me, your emotional brain is not going to let go because we are hardwired to protect ourselves. So the idea of being taken advantage of in any way, and disrespected or, mistreated in any way is going to cause your whole amygdala, which is like the panic alarm of the body, it's going to trigger that alarm and it's going to start going, danger, 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 right? Run away, or fight, right? Or just stop, dealing with this person. Sorry, straps, drive me nuts. The other thing that I think is really helpful is to ask yourself, what else could this mean? If I'm making it mean that nobody respects me, or that this person doesn't respect me, and that this person is terrible and I shouldn't be friends with them. Well, what else could it mean? What else? Could it mean that I need to start really owning my feelings and expressing them? Could it also mean that I need just to draw more clear boundaries? Could it mean that I've been afraid of drawing boundaries? Because if being generous and kind and helpful is really important to me, was I afraid of losing this person's love and respect by saying, hey, if you borrow, my lawnmower, like I just really need you to bring it back. I shouldn't have to go get it, right? Like, but if you don't tell them that and you just keep expecting, and then every time they borrow, they don't bring it back and you never say anything, then you have to ask yourself, well, why not? And if the reason why you're not is because you don't want to sound demanding, annoying, or like you're being, like high maintenance or something, right? Or like, oh, well, they should just know. They should just know. It's common courtesy. Well, sure, we would love it if everyone just knew, but they don't. And maybe that's the point of friendship, is to meet people where they are and help move them forward. Meet and move. Okay. Connect before you correct. We don't have to think about boundaries as being rude or difficult or high maintenance or like bossy and bitchy. Boundaries actually instruct and demonstrate and help others know how to love us and how to be in a relationship with us. And it's really helpful to know what people value. I think if we looked at boundaries more like expressions of respect, right? Like, hey, this is how I want to respect you, and this is how I want to be respected. This feels good to me. This does not feel good to me. Being able to, I think you can be kind, loving, and generous, and direct, and express your needs and expectations. And then if your expectations are off, the other person has the opportunity to meet you where you are and move you more towards the middle. So, we really want to help each other get better and be better. And maybe this conflict happened with these two people because they both were there to help each other grow. Unfortunately, when it becomes a he said, she said, whole cockfight over, who's the worst person or the biggest asshole in the situation, you completely lose. Everybody loses because there's just no learning. And that's the thing, is if you can learn something from anything, then you stop being a victim. You can't be a victim if you learn from the experience. So the person you are calling the perpetrator in your situation, if you're feeling victimized, disrespected, whatever it is, then if you feel victimized, then that means that there must be a perpetrator. A victim has no power. That's what makes them a victim. A victim has no choice. That's what makes them a victim and why they have no power. Power and freedom come from being able to make choices, right? So exercising your right to choose. And we always have a right to choose, even when we think we don't. Dr. Viktor Frankl, who created the psychology called, the model of psychology called logotherapy. It's the psychology of meaning, the way that we create meaning and attach meaning to the things in our lives, for better or for worse. He said that the last of the human freedoms is man's ability to choose his own attitude in the face of uncontrollable conditions or circumstances. So you can always choose your attitude. So if you react, then if you react, then that is you getting triggered and having an emotional reaction, or coming from a place of criticism. And if you respond, that's different, because when you respond, you're actually choosing your words, choosing your intention, choosing your energy, choosing your tone, choosing it all. So the other person may not get it. They may not agree. And that's actually their freedom. That's their choice, right? So if you can come up with 3 helpful, useful, empowering, or positive meanings to the situation, instead of the meaning that you're giving it that's so negative, then you're really on the right track to starting to see this differently and to loosening the grip of the ego on this relationship. So, it's really a powerful thing to come up with, at least 3 different meanings other than the negative one. It's better to be uncertain than certain that this person's wrong, right? If you're a little uncertain, maybe they're not wrong, then you don't feel under attack. Then you feel more curious, like, well, I wonder what this is about. Maybe we can come up with a solution together, right? But you do have to process those hurt feelings. It's especially if you've been holding on to a lot of stuff, you need to dump it out. So get out a journal, pad and paper, whatever you got, and just write it all down. Do a huge mind dump. Maybe write the person a completely unedited, unhinged letter that you will not send them, by the way. You're going to rip it up, burn it, throw it away, delete it, whatever you got. But like, you know, and by the way, if you're typing, do not type it in a messenger, social media, or an email. Do it in a Word document that you can delete, that you're not accidentally going to hit, you know, the return button and it's going to get sent. So that's really important. Believe me. Whoo, I have seen some messages go to send that were just meant to be like mind dumps. And it's, yeah. So do give yourself that safety net. To get your feelings out, get them out. And then, you know, take a look at them and be like, okay, even though I'm so fired up about this still, okay. Let me share something with you that I loved. There was a great quote that said, when you're willing to let go of your need to be right, you're not making yourself wrong. Okay. So when I say like, let go of the need to be right, you don't have to feel like then, you know, you're the perpetrator and you've done something wrong. It's just the idea that, you know what, you're right. You're right about what you feel. It is what you feel. It's right. It's valid. It's your feeling. But remember that feelings are not facts. Okay. So what I mean when I say it's right and it's valid is that, yes, that's the feeling you're having in the moment based upon the way you are perceiving this. So that is the right reaction to that perception. But what I'm asking you to like let go of is the idea or the need for your perception of the situation to be the only right fact, right? Let that be a little uncertain, your perception of it. So yes, you're right. You are right to feel the way that you feel based upon the way you experienced this. And the other person is right to feel the way they feel based upon their side and their experience of it. Because remember, they're experiencing it through the filters of their stuff, and their relationship with themselves is what's underneath their relationship with you. So you're exploding on them, pressed a button in them. Maybe they have a belief about themselves, maybe in their relationship with themselves. For instance, this woman felt it made her feel like a burden and like unwelcome and what was the word? Oh gosh, when somebody misunderstands you, misunderstood. My brain, it's very late in the day right now. All right, so this is very long-winded. All right, next thing to ask yourself, what do I need in order to feel good now? What do you need? So think about the criticism. Like, if his criticism against her was, she just is so selfish and never thinks about me and is just acting very disrespectful. What's the wish? I wish she would respect my time, my space, my things. I wish she cared about me as much as I care about her. I wish that she wanted to help me as much as I've always been willing to help her. That's my wish. And isn't it sad that we can't just say that? So, do you think there's anything that could change your perception? what would change your perception of the situation and of the other person? So this gentleman said what would change his perception is if she would apologize for, you know, her side of it. And that, and I said, well, again, what if she doesn't think she did anything wrong? We agreed that what would change his perception in that case would be if she were to say, I'm sorry that I did not know that you felt that way. I'm sorry that if my actions made you feel disrespected because I was not intending that. And I'm really sorry if it made you feel that way or if it came across that way. So I said, would that be okay? He said, yeah, that would work. That would be okay. So she didn't have to own his feelings like she was the perpetrator, but that's realistic. I think we are willing to apologize if, our totally unconscious behaviors made somebody feel bad. Yeah, I would be very sorry that somebody misinterpreted that. But expecting that person to come out of the gate with the apology first is pretty unrealistic when they are under a very different impression about you. So you have to be able to understand that like, hey, you know what? Is there anything that you need to apologize for? And at first he was like, absolutely not. I was like, well, we got more work to do. So I said, do you need more information as to why she was acting this way? And he said, yes. I said, okay. Do you need to know why this person did this? Yes. He said, okay. Do you need to know that this person really does care for you? He said, well, it would be nice. Okay. And is there some sort of commitment that you need from this person moving forward? And if so, what is that? Like, what are your like terms, And then I said, do you need to change anything in the dynamic of the relationship? Like, do you need to change the way you guys are doing things? Like, do you need to set some boundaries or, change the friendship? Maybe you guys, like, for example, if it's somebody who has issues with money, like, maybe they've got a friend who like owes them a bunch of money and they're just so resentful that it's like destroying the friendship. Can you be friends with that person and just like not loan them money? Can you just like be like, hey, Jack, love our friendship, totally down to hang out, but I'm not your bank. So you're going to need to like pay for your end of things and I'm not loaning money. Okay. So if we go out to dinner, we're going Dutch, right? Okay. So, what else? Yeah, I mean, do you need to apologize to this person? And in that gentleman's case that I told you, the example, he did. He needed to apologize to her for the way that he was like mouthing off at her and exploding at her for what to her seemed like out of the blue. He needed to apologize that he hadn't expressed how he was feeling for such a long time and that, his behavior was really just a result of feeling hurt, and disrespected, and that's just a trigger for him. Do you need to remember who this person is and that you really do love them? Do you need to remember that? Sometimes with my daughter, when she's in a really bad mood or being really difficult, or is just, when she's just got me so angry and triggered, I have a little mental trick that I do where I think of her. I have this mental picture of her as like a little teeny, I was like the little baby when I was rocking her in the rocking chair and just how sweet she was. And I also think I have another mental picture of when she was like probably like 3 or 4 and she was just so stinking cute with like these little ponytails and her little romper and those big chubby cheeks and her funny laugh and her cute voice and just how much fun we had together. And I will think of that. And I'm smiling right now just thinking about it. And that's what it does, is it like puts a smile on your face from your heart, from the inside out. And it changes my energy. So when I need to like calm down and really connect with her, so that I can help us correct a situation, yeah, like I meet her in the moment and she is where she is, but my energy is able to change and be softer. So can you remember why you care about this person? And can you think about them that way when you speak to them so that you can connect with them rather than just wanting to change them and correct them and criticize them? So then we have to move into the action. Okay. So once you've done all that, that's all the inner work on your side of the street. It's a lot right there. That's like a lot of inner questioning, right? So then we want to look at, well, how can I communicate my needs in a way that truly empowers me, right? Like, how can I be sincere and honest and direct and non-confrontational, right? Because remember, you want to speak so they can hear you. And that's why we always say, like in the connective parenting, gentle parenting model, it's so important to connect before you correct. Because if you want cooperation and collaboration, you need to connect first. Because if you're in the critical mind and you're holding on the resentment and you're criticizing the other person even inwardly, you are not going to be in your frontal lobe. You're not going to be in that, like, in the higher brain. You're going to be in the lower brain, which doesn't have any connectability. It doesn't have any connective, aspect. So it's just reactive and self-protective, right? So the lower brain, the emotional brain, is going to want to attack or defend or just stay stuck because that feels safest. So it either just digs in, doesn't move, unmovable, or it attacks, it lashes out, or it pushes back, right? Or runs away and hides, right? Okay, so what are your options? So could you say to the person, hey, I need your help. I'm really unhappy with the way things have been. And I really want to do my part to help our friendship heal. And I'm willing to know what it is that you need and what it is that you wish were different about our relationship. Or you might say, I just don't understand what was going on for you. And I'd like to, because I feel like I have a misperception, or I'm sorry because I may have misinterpreted you and your behavior because I felt disrespected. And I realized that I never communicated my boundaries to you. So you probably were surprised when I finally lashed out. And in my mind, it was obvious, but I guess it wasn't because you never picked up on it. And, I'm just wanting to clarify, how we both experience this and like how we can, make it better if we want to. And I don't know what your comfort level is with that. So the last question is, what is wonderful about this conflict? Oh my God, I just like shook the whole table. What is wonderful about this conflict? Is it an opportunity for you to stop an old pattern that is completely self-limiting? If you have a belief that you are not appreciated, or that you need people to validate you in order to feel good enough or seen, well, that's a pretty self-limiting pattern, isn't it? And you didn't even know you had it. It's so deeply subconscious. So what's wonderful about this is that this conflict is showing you an area where you can grow. If you woke up in a body today, my friend, you are still growing. I don't care if you're 97, you're still growing. So let this be an area of growth for you, and, just be really gentle with yourself and give yourself a lot of grace. Forgive yourself. It'll help you give the other person grace, and it'll help you forgive them. I know this seems like an awful lot of work. And that's why often people do this kind of, exercise or this kind of inquiry with, a practitioner, or a coach or a therapist. It's because these questions are triggering, and we have what are called blind spots. There's just going to be parts of your own psyche that you're just not wired to see. And the reason for that is because those aspects of your personality, those strong suits, if you will, right? Those fixed ways of being that influence the way you speak and the way you show up and the things that, it's the energy behind your intention. Those things are hardwired within you to keep you safe. So we operate from these subconscious programs, and we don't even know that we're doing it. So what's great about conflict and what's amazingly rich about relationships is that relationships are designed to show you the unhealed parts of your mind, the parts of you that are ready to grow. And the way that you can tell is that it typically causes some discomfort when you bump into them. So if you are feeling resentful, if there is an unresolved conflict in your life, you can do this work. And if you need some guidance and you just want somebody to work it with you and to help you identify where you might be blocked, or maybe you're just like, you got a blind spot, you just can't see it. You're like, oh my gosh, like I got to question 5 and I'm just like stuck, that is a good time to reach out and get some help. And if you don't have a coach or a practitioner who can help you with this, just visit jaimemagic.com and shoot me an email through my website, and I would be more than happy to connect with you and see if I can be of service to you in this way. Until next time, just remember, it's all an inside job. And, baby steps. Baby steps are quantum leaps in disguise. So I do hope that you will take a baby step today towards reconnecting with that magic that is yours, that is within you, and just bringing it into your world in your way. All right. Talk soon. Be well.